The flashing red and blue lights bounced across my old wooden ranch house, painting the wide night sky in colors I had not seen in years. My hands were raised in the air as 3 police officers pointed their flashlights and their suspicion directly at me. Their voices were loud, sharp, and angry. "Sir, step away from the porch. HOA reported a trespasser on this property," one of them shouted. I stood there, a 72-year-old man with a gray beard, wrinkled face, and a simple brown jacket that had more stitches than fabric. The wind whistled through the tall grass behind me. My heart beat fast, not because I feared arrest, but because of the simple truth hidden in my pocket, the truth that would shock every single one of them. The officer stepped closer. "Sir, this land belongs to the Willow Creek HOA. You are not allowed here. Who are you?" I opened my mouth slowly, knowing this moment was bigger than these officers understood. The HOA president, a thin woman named Linda, stood behind them with her arms folded and a smug smile on her face. She whispered loudly to one of the officers, "He broke into this ranch. I told you we needed to stop people like him from ruining this community. People like me. Old, quiet, and new in town." I reached into my pocket and the officers tensed, hands flying to their holsters. I froze and said calmly, "Easy, I'm just taking out a document." 1 step, 2 steps. The officer's flashlight followed my hand as I pulled out a thick envelope with gold edges. Linda scoffed, "What is that, some fake paper?" But the moment I opened the envelope, the officer closest to me leaned in, reading the bold letters at the top, words that wiped the smug look off Linda's face and replaced it with pure confusion. The officer blinked and whispered, "Wait, this says." He didn't finish the sentence. Because right then, one of the police radios crackled loudly, and a voice shouted, "Unit 7, we have a situation. Someone from the HOA is trying to break into the old ranch barn." Everyone spun around. Even Linda. Even the officers. Even me. The moment was shattered. The truth I was about to reveal hung in the air like a trapped bird, and now something else was happening on my land. The officers ran toward the barn, Linda trailing behind them. I remained on the porch, gripping the envelope tightly. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't trespassing. I wasn't lost. I wasn't confused. I wasn't even a visitor. I owned everything under their feet now. But before I could say a word, a loud scream burst from the direction of the barn. It echoed across the ranch. Something terrible had just happened, and every single person froze. And that is where our story begins. Hours earlier, before the police lights, before the shouting, before the chaos, I had arrived at Willow Creek Ranch, a place I once called home 50 years ago. Back then, it wasn't a fancy community with gates, rules, and HOA members who behaved like kings and queens. It was simple farmland. Quiet, peaceful. My late wife, Mary, and I used to walk across the fields at sunset, dreaming of raising horses and children. Life had changed since then. Mary was gone. My health wasn't as strong, and the world had become noisy, cold, and too fast for a slow-hearted man like me. So when the opportunity came to buy the entire stretch of land, every acre of it, from the last remaining owner of the original ranch, I did. Quietly, privately, without the HOA knowing. They only controlled the modern neighborhood built beside my ranch, not the ranch itself. But the day I arrived, they assumed everything belonged to them. The first trouble came when I drove my old rusty pickup truck through the gate. The guard looked at me like I was a stray dog. "Sir, you can't go in like that." "Like what?" I asked gently. "Like that." He waved at my truck as if it smelled bad. I smiled and said, "It got me here, didn't it?" He frowned and started writing something on his little clipboard. "HOA won't like this." I didn't know what he meant at the time, but I would soon find out. After settling into the ranch house, dusty, quiet, and full of memories, I stepped outside to breathe in the sweet evening air. But before I could even enjoy it, I saw a group of HOA members walking toward me. 3 women, 2 men, all starring. The tallest man, Greg, spoke first. "Sir, who allowed you to stay here?" I chuckled softly. "Son, I don't need permission to stay in my own house." Linda, the woman from earlier, stepped forward with a plastic smile. This land is under HOA rules. We need to inspect your house to make sure it's up to community standards. Inspect, I repeated. For what? She looked me up and down as if I was dirt. Your kind of people usually break rules. My kind, my smile faded. Old folks who try to live cheaply in nice communities, she said. Her words cut deeper than she knew. My whole life I believed in kindness, in helping people before judging them. But these people, they saw me and decided everything from my clothes to my truck made me unworthy. I didn't want trouble, so I tried to stay calm. Ma'am, I said, this ranch is not part of your HOA. They laughed, real loud laughter. Greg shook his head. You're confused. Everything here belongs to Willow Creek HOA. No, I said quietly, it doesn't. They didn't listen. They turned around, pulled out their phones and began taking pictures of my home, my truck, my land, even the grass. One woman even said, we'll send him a fine first thing tomorrow. A fine? For living on my own land. I sighed and went inside, thinking it would end there. But it didn't. Later that night, I heard footsteps outside. Voices. Whispering. Peeking through the window, I saw HOA members gathering near the barn, shining flashlights inside, trying to break the lock. That lock had been there since my wife and I installed it decades ago. I stepped onto the porch, ready to tell them to stop. But Linda spotted me and screamed, he's trespassing, he's trying to chase us away, call the cops. And just like that, everything exploded. Within minutes, police cars arrived, sirens howling, lights flashing. Officers rushed toward me as if I was a criminal. HOA members stood proudly behind them, pointing fingers, accusing me of crimes I did not commit. And now, standing in front of my own home with the police demanding answers, the truth was on the tip of my tongue. The truth inside that envelope. The truth that would change everything. But before I could reveal it, that scream from the barn ripped through the night. Loud, frightened, and full of danger. What happened inside that barn? Who screamed? Why were HOA members even inside it? The answer would shake them all. And it would change everything that came next. Where are you watching from? The scream tore through the cold night air like a blade. Sharp and terrifying, every police officer stopped running. Every HOA member froze in their tracks. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as the echo bounced across the wide fields of my ranch. For a moment, no one moved. Then one of the officers shouted, everyone stay back, don't go near the barn. But of course, nobody listened. HOA members, fueled by fear and curiosity, rushed toward the large wooden barn my wife and I had built half a century ago. The officers ran after them, trying to contain the chaos. Their flashlights swung wildly through the dark like frantic stars. I stayed on the porch for a second, gripping the envelope that held the truth. A truth that would silence their insults forever if I chose to reveal it now. But that scream meant something serious had happened. And right now, dealing with that came first. I stepped down the porch stairs slowly, my old knees complaining with every movement. The grass was wet from evening dew, brushing against my boots as I approached the barn. My heart thumped hard, not because I feared danger but because the barn held memories. Painful, beautiful memories. Mary and I used to dance inside that barn when the radio still worked. Now it was filled with strangers who believed they controlled everything. As I got closer, I saw two HOA members backing away from the barn door, their faces pale, hands shaking. Linda stood at the front of the crowd, barking orders like a self-made general. What happened in there? She demanded. A young HOA woman stuttered, pointing. As something moved inside, something big. Greg, the tall man with more ego than sense, puffed out his chest. Probably an animal, or maybe the old man hid something dangerous in there. That last part made a few people glance at me sharply. Dangerous. The only dangerous thing on this ranch was their disrespect. One officer walked slowly toward the barn with his flashlight raised. Everyone stepped back. We'll go inside and check. But before he could take another step, The barn door creaked open. Very slowly. Very loudly. The crowd gasped. Flashlights pointed at the opening, hands shook, people whispered, and hearts pounded. Even Greg's tough face melted into fear. A shadow moved inside. Something or someone was approaching the doorway. Linda grabbed the officer's arm with trembling fingers. What is that? Who is in there? The officer didn't answer. He was too focused. Too tense. Too still. Then, out stepped a figure. Tall. Wrapped in heavy clothes. Covered in dust. A man. A man I instantly recognized. The officers pointed their flashlights at him. The HOA members screamed and scattered. And my entire body froze. Because standing in the doorway of my barn was my nephew, Jacob. The same Jacob I hadn't seen in 10 years. The same Jacob who disappeared after arguing with my late brother. The same Jacob who used to help me fix fences, feed the horses, and laugh like sunshine. Except now, he didn't look like sunshine. He looked tired, dirty, lost, and terrified. His eyes met mine, and his lips trembled. Uncle Henry. The crowd erupted in panic. Linda yelled, "There's a trespasser hiding on community property." 2 HOA men yelled, "Call backup." One woman screamed, "He could be dangerous." But Jacob wasn't dangerous. He was broken. And seeing him again cracked something inside me. The officer nearest to him stepped forward. "Sir, raise your hands where we can see them." Jacob hesitated, shaking. "Do it now," the officer barked. Jacob flinched. Linda folded her arms and smirked. I knew this old man was hiding something. First he sneaks onto HOA land, now he hides criminals in barns. We must evict him immediately. I clenched my jaw. Enough was enough. I stepped forward. "He's not a criminal," I said loudly. "He's family." All eyes snapped toward me. Even Jacob looked shocked. The officer frowned. "Sir, step back, we'll handle this." "No," I said quietly. "This is my ranch, my barn, and he is my nephew. He's been through enough." But Linda pushed forward. "Your ranch, sir, you are confused. This land belongs to the HOA. We have rights. We have rules. We have." I raised the envelope slowly. "The truth," I said, "is right here." Everyone went silent. The officers. The HOA members. Even Jacob. But before I could open it, one of the HOA men, a red-faced guy named Mark, suddenly rushed forward and snatched the envelope out of my hand. He held it up triumphantly. "Let me see what this old man is hiding," he declared. My heart dropped. "No," I shouted, "give that back." But he had already torn the envelope open. Already unfolded the papers. Already scanned the first line. His jaw dropped. His eyes widened. His face went pale. Everyone leaned closer. "What does it say?" Linda demanded. "Read it out loud," Greg yelled. The officer crossed his arms. "Let's hear it." Mark swallowed hard, struggling to form words. "It says," he stuttered, "it says." But before he could finish, Jacob suddenly stumbled forward and collapsed onto the ground. Hard. Everyone screamed. The officers rushed to him. Linda took several steps back in fear. And I dropped to my knees beside him. His breathing was fast. Weak. Uneven. "Jacob," I shouted, shaking him gently. "What happened to you? Why were you hiding in that barn?" His eyes fluttered open. He tried to speak but only managed a whisper. They were after me." The officers leaned closer. "Who?" one asked. But Jacob's voice broke completely. His head slumped sideways. His body went still. And the night filled with the sound of panic all over again. The officers yelled for medical help. The HOA members whispered behind shaking hands. And as chaos erupted, Mark's voice, still trembling, rose above the noise. "This paper, it says." Everyone turned to him. Every flashlight pointed at him. Every heartbeat waited. "This paper says, the man we called a trespasser. He took a shaky breath. Is actually the sole owner of all Willow Creek land. Gasps exploded in the night. Linda shook her head. No, that can't be true, that's impossible. Greg muttered, all the land, no way. But Mark wasn't done. And that means, he whispered, voice cracking, every house, every street, every building, every single thing in this entire community is built on his property. Silence. Cold, heavy silence. Then, the medical team rushed onto the scene. Jacob's condition worsened. One officer shouted, Sir, get back, let the medics take him. But all I could see, all I could feel, was my nephew slipping away again. And this time, maybe for good. What happened to him? I whispered. No one answered. Because no one knew. And that was the most terrifying part. As the medics lifted Jacob onto the stretcher, and the crowd murmured in confusion, shock, and fear, Linda slowly turned toward me. Her voice was shaking, not from anger this time, but from something else. Fear. You own everything, she whispered. But before I could reply, one of the medics shouted urgently. His pulse is dropping, we need to move now. The ambulance door slammed shut. The siren roared to life. Red lights flashed across my ranch. And the vehicle sped away into the night, taking my nephew with it. Everyone turned to me. Everyone was waiting. Everyone was afraid. But I didn't say a single word. Because this chapter wasn't ending with answers. It was ending with another extreme event. And the storm was only just beginning. The ambulance tore down the dusty road, its red lights fading into the darkness, leaving a thick silence behind. Everyone stood frozen. The police, the HOA members, even the neighbors who had gathered outside their glowing porch lights to watch the chaos unfold. Only the sound of the crickets filled the air now. My hand trembled slightly as I stared at the empty road. My nephew, my brother's only son, had just been taken away unconscious, barely breathing. I didn't know where he had been all these years. I didn't know who he meant when he whispered they were after me. And I didn't know if he would even make it through the night. But one thing I knew for sure. Whoever hurt him was still out there. Watching. Waiting. And maybe closer than any of us realized. I took a slow breath and turned back toward the crowd gathered near the barn. The same people who had mocked me, fined me, called the police on me, judged me before even learning my name. Now every single one of them looked at me differently. Fear, shock, guilt, curiosity. Everything except respect, that would come later. Mark still held the crumpled property papers in his shaking hands, the ones he had snatched from me without permission, the ones that confirmed the truth I had kept quiet about. Everything, the land, the ranch, the fields, the streets, the houses, every inch of Willow Creek stood on my property now. But I wasn't ready to reveal all of that. Not yet. Too much was happening. Too many questions needed answers. And right now, Jacob mattered more than their attitudes or confusion. The officer closest to me, Officer Daniels, a calm young man with steady eyes, cleared his throat. Sir, do you want to tell us what's going on? Why was your nephew hiding in that barn? I looked at the barn. Its doors still hung open, creaking softly in the wind. Inside, the shadows looked deeper than usual, darker, like something dangerous had happened there. I don't know yet, I said quietly. Officer Daniels nodded gently. Do you want us to sweep the barn, make sure no one else is inside? I hesitated. The barn wasn't just wood and nails. It was memories, Mary's laughter, the sound of our young dreams, the moments we carved into time. But right now, it was part of something bigger. Yes, I finally said, check it. He nodded and motioned for two officers to follow him toward the barn. As they walked off, I heard murmuring behind me. Linda. Of course. She stepped forward with crossed arms, but this time her face wasn't full of arrogance. It was full of fear and disbelief. This can't be real, she muttered. How could you own everything? That doesn't make sense. We have an HOA board, we have regulations, we have documents. I stared at her calmly. Documents can't erase history, I said. My family built Willow Creek before any HOA existed, before any of you moved here. Greg joined in, eyes wide and suspicious. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell us? I sighed. Because I came here to live peacefully, not to fight, not to control anything, not to make enemies. Linda scoffed. Well, you chose the wrong place if you wanted peace. And you made the wrong assumptions, I replied. Her jaw clenched. But before she could speak again, Mark stepped between us, still holding the documents. These papers, they're real, he said, voice unsteady. These are legal, they're certified, this isn't a joke. The HOA members gasped softly. One woman whispered, does this mean we're trespassing? Greg frowned. What does this mean for us? I took back the papers gently. It means calm down. Nothing is changing right now. I'm not throwing anyone out. I'm not closing the HOA. I'm not taking anything from you. Everyone exchanged confused looks. But I continued, I deserve respect, and I deserve to live here peacefully without being harassed. Linda's lips tightened. She hated the idea of anyone having more authority than her, especially someone she underestimated. Well, she said, forcing a smile, I'm sure we can sort something out, maybe talk about boundaries. But her eyes told a different story. She wasn't done fighting. Not even close. Before anyone could say more, Officer Daniels called out from the barn. Sir, you need to see this. My stomach tightened. Another extreme event. I walked toward the barn with the officers. The HOA members followed behind us like frightened children. The inside of the barn smelled like dust, old wood, and something else. Fear, maybe. The officers' flashlights bounced across walls, revealing what once were tools, piles of hay, old furniture, and memories covered in cobwebs. But then the beam of a flashlight stopped on something in the corner. A hole. Not a small one. A deep one. Freshly dug. Officer Daniels crouched next to it. Sir, it looks like someone was trying to dig something up or hide something. Hide something, Linda gasped. My heart sank. Jacob. My nephew had been hiding in my barn, terrified, weak, and sick. Had he been forced to dig this? Or was he trying to uncover something? Officer Daniels pointed at the dirt. There are footprints, struggle marks. Someone else was here with him. Someone else, Greg echoed nervously. I looked closer. The dirt was disturbed. The edges of the hole were uneven. And then I saw something that made my breath freeze. Something shiny sticking out from the dirt. Metal. Old metal. Not a tool. Not a can. Something important. Something hidden. I crouched slowly and brushed off some of the dirt with my hand. The officers leaned in. The HOA members leaned in. Even Linda, who had been so full of false confidence earlier, leaned in with trembling fingers. The shiny edge became clearer. A lock. An old one. Attached to a small wooden chest buried halfway in the ground. A chest I had never seen before. One officer whispered, "Was that yours?" "No," I said softly. "I've never seen this in my life." "So then who put it here?" another officer asked. But before I could answer, before anyone could process the discovery, a loud crack echoed from the back of the barn. Like something snapping. Something or someone moving. The officers jumped to their feet. One shouted, "Who's there? Come out with your hands up." Everyone looked toward the dark corner where the noise came from. Flashlights shook in trembling hands. Linda clutched Greg's arm, terrified. Mark hid behind another neighbor. Officer Daniels raised his weapon. "Show yourself," he commanded. But what stepped out of the darkness was not an officer, not a neighbor, not an animal. It was a man. Tall, hooded, covered in dirt, his clothes torn, his hands shaking, and his eyes cold, hard, and threatening. He stepped into the flashlight beam slowly, then pointed directly at me. "You," he growled. The entire barn fell silent. My heart thudded painfully. The officers tensed. The crowd froze. The hooded stranger took another step forward. "You should have stayed away, old man." Everyone inhaled sharply. Another extreme event had arrived. And this one was dangerous. The hooded man stepped fully into the beam of the flashlight, and for a second, not a long one but sharp enough to sting, I felt my old heart stop. His eyes were cold and wild, the kind you see on someone who's been running from danger for too long or someone who is the danger. The officers reacted instantly. "Sir, don't move," Officer Daniels barked, lifting his weapon. But the man didn't flinch, he didn't blink, he didn't fear the officers. He stared straight at me, pointing with a trembling but determined hand. "You should have stayed away, Henry," he growled. Every HOA member gasped. Every officer stiffened. Every nerve in my body tightened. He knew my name. "How does he know him?" Linda shrieked, taking cover behind Greg. Greg raised both hands and shouted, "Sir, calm down, calm down." But the man ignored them. His attention, his anger, his focus, everything was locked on me. I took a slow step forward. My knees felt heavy, my chest tight, but my voice stayed calm. "Son," I said gently, "I don't know you, but I need to know something. What happened to my nephew? What did you do to Jacob?" The man's jaw twitched. The barn fell silent. The officers tightened their stance. One whispered into his radio. Another began circling slowly to the right, trying to trap the stranger without setting him off. But he didn't look at them. He didn't even acknowledge them. He only glared at me. "Jacob should have kept his mouth shut," he snarled. My heart dropped. Linda gasped loudly. "Oh my goodness, he did do something." Greg muttered, "This is bad, really bad." But the man kept talking, stepping closer into the light. "He should have known better than to dig it up," he hissed. "And you're next if you don't leave." I stared at him, confusion hitting me hard. "Dig what up?" "The chest." I glanced at the half-buried wooden box in the dirt. It looked old, older than anything I remembered storing in this barn. And the way the stranger watched it, the way his eyes darted toward it, told me everything I needed to know. That chest wasn't mine. But it meant something to him. Something big. Something dangerous. Officer Daniels spoke sharply. "Sir, step away, put your hands where we can see them." But the hooded man didn't budge. Instead, he turned toward the officer and barked, "Back off, or I'll make sure none of you leave here tonight." Linda screamed. Someone else dropped their flashlight. Chaos stirred behind me as HOA members pushed each other aside trying to hide, but the officers held their ground. This was no longer property drama. This was something darker. I lifted both hands and stepped in front of the officers before things got worse. "Son," I said calmly, "we don't want trouble. I just want my nephew safe." His eyes flickered. For the first time, something cracked in his expression. Not softness, not mercy, but something like regret. "He shouldn't have come here," the man whispered. "He should have let the past stay buried." "The past?" I asked. "What past?" The man began breathing faster. His fingers twitched. His shoulders shook with a mix of anger and fear. "Everything changed the moment you stepped foot back on this land," he said. "Why?" I asked softly. "Because this land doesn't belong to you anymore." The officers exchanged confused looks. Linda scoffed. "Now he's talking nonsense. Of course the land doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the HOA. But the hooded man whipped his head toward her, and the look he gave made the poor woman stumble backward. "You have no idea what you're standing on," he growled. Linda squeaked, "Gee, Greg, protect me." Greg stepped forward bravely, then immediately stepped back when the hooded man narrowed his eyes at him. Typical Greg. I focused again on the stranger. "Jacob didn't break into my barn," I said gently. "He was hiding from you." The man flinched. Just slightly. "But enough. You're asking the wrong questions," he snapped, "and you're running out of time to ask them." Officer Daniels raised his voice. "Put your hands up or we will." But he didn't finish. Because at that moment, the hooded man reached behind his belt. And the officers all reacted at once. Flashlights shot upward. Weapons clicked. Voices shouted. Hands up. Drop it. Don't move. Linda screamed loud enough to wake the ranch chickens. But the man didn't pull a weapon. He pulled a matchbox. He held it up slowly, eyes blazing. Take one more step, he warned, and I'll burn this whole barn down. Officer Daniels cursed. Sir, put it down. The other officers tensed, glancing around. The barn was old, wooden, dry, aged by decades of Texas sun. One spark. Just one. And everything would become a roaring fire. The man flicked the box open with his thumb. Didn't think the old man would come back, he muttered. Didn't think anyone would find the chest, but your nephew found it, and he paid the price. My breath caught. What price? I demanded. His voice dropped low and furious. He knew too much. Something inside me snapped. I took a step forward, dangerous, stupid, reckless for a man my age, but I didn't care. You hurt Jacob, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You hurt my family. The man's eyes flicked toward me. A long, tense moment. Then, he smiled. A cold, cruel smile. You're about to understand why. And he struck the match. The flame burst to life. The officers lunged forward. Someone screamed behind me. Flashlights jerked wildly. The flame illuminated the man's face, a twisted look of triumph, just as he tossed the burning match toward a pile of dry hay near the barn wall. The officers shouted. I jumped forward instinctively. But I wasn't fast enough. The match hit the hay. A soft whoosh. A tiny spark. A growing glow. And then, the entire corner of the barn erupted into flames. Bright. Vast. Hungry. The crowd panicked. HOA members shoved each other back toward the door. Greg tripped and fell into Linda, who pushed him away and shrieked at him for touching her. Officer Daniels yelled, Evacuate the barn, go, go, go. Flames crawled up the old wooden beams like wild beasts, and smoke poured upward, filling the rafters. The hooded man disappeared into the shadows before anyone could grab him. The officers chased him, but lost him in the darkness outside. Meanwhile, the fire spread faster than any of us expected. Crackling. Hissing. Eating the barn alive. I stood frozen for a moment as memories flashed inside me. Mary laughing while feeding the horses, young Jacob brushing the mares, the sunlight streaming through these same boards. And now it was burning. My barn. My memories. My peace. But something even worse hit me. The chest. Still half buried. Still exposed. Still unknown. Still dangerous. And the fire was creeping toward it. Officer Daniels grabbed my arm. Sir, we need to get out now. But I pulled my arm back. The chest, I shouted. We need to grab that chest. The flames roared louder, spreading across the floorboards. The officers hesitated only for a second. But that second was enough for the fire to reach the chest, the flames curling around it like fingers. Wood cracked. Smoke billowed. Heat slammed against our faces. And then, before anyone could grab it, before anyone could save it, the chest burst open, and something metallic rolled out. Something shining. Something dangerous. The officers stopped instantly. I stopped breathing. Linda screamed again. Greg collapsed to the floor and crawled backward. Because lying there, reflecting the firelight, was a metal object. A weapon. Old. Rusty. But unmistakable. A gun. Not a modern one. Something older. Something tied to the past. Something tied to my land. Something tied to my family. Officer Daniels whispered, Sir, what is that? But I didn't know. I had never seen it in my life. And yet, someone hid it in my barn. Someone wanted it buried. Someone wanted no one to know. Now everyone knew. And before Daniels could take a single step toward the gun, the barn roof groaned loudly. Wood snapped overhead. Flames curled across the beams. And then, A beam broke loose, falling, crashing, straight toward the metal object. The officers grabbed me, pulling me back as the burning beam slammed to the floor, covering the chest completely. A rush of heat exploded outward. Flames shot higher, and the fire swallowed everything. The chest, the gun, and every answer we thought we were about to find. The officers rushed us outside just as the barn wall gave way, collapsing into burning rubble. The night sky filled with sparks. The crowd watched in horror. And I watched everything I loved burn. But what terrified me the most wasn't the fire. It was the stranger's final words. "You should have stayed away." He wasn't warning me. He was threatening me. And now that the chest was exposed, now that the secret weapon had been revealed, things were going to get worse. Much worse. The flames painted the night sky orange as the barn collapsed piece by piece, old wood snapping like bones under the weight of decades. Sparks flew upward into the darkness, drifting away like dying fireflies. I stood there, my old hands trembling, my heart heavy, as memories burned in front of me. That barn held pieces of my life. My youth. My wife. My family. And now it was gone. But even the fire wasn't the worst thing that night. What frightened me most was the hooded man's voice echoing in my head. "You should have stayed away or you're next." A threat. A warning. A promise. The crowd murmured behind me as the fire trucks arrived, their sirens crying into the sky. Firefighters jumped down, rushing forward with hoses, shouting to one another as they fought the flames. But even with the water blasting against the fire, I could tell. This inferno wasn't stopping anytime soon. Linda clung to Greg's arm, shaking like a leaf. What was that man talking about? Why did he come after the old barn? Why did he know Henry? Why did he? Greg placed a shaky hand on her shoulder. "Linda, maybe now is not the time." "No," she snapped. "This man moved in 1 day ago and already the police are here, the barn is burning down, a criminal shows up, a mystery chest is found," she pointed at me. "And he claims to own all this land. No, something is wrong, something is very wrong." One of the police officers overheard her and stepped forward. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." But Linda was far from calm. She pointed at me like I was the danger. "He brought trouble with him, and now look what's happening." I wanted to speak, to defend myself. But before I could, Officer Daniels approached me, his face grim and determined. "Mr. Henry," he said quietly, "we need to talk away from the others." I nodded and followed him a few steps away from the crowd. The fire crackled behind us, roaring like a hungry beast. Daniels lowered his voice. "Sir, that man, do you recognize him?" I let out a long, tired breath. "No, not at all." "You're sure?" he pressed. "He knew your name, he knew your nephew, he knew something about the chest, and he clearly believed you were connected." My chest tightened. "I've never seen him," I said, "but he's dangerous and he hurt my nephew." Daniel's jaw tightened. "We'll find him, but this situation is strange." He looked over at the burning barn. "Your nephew showed up dehydrated, beaten, hiding in this place, digging up a chest you didn't know existed. Then a man shows up trying to destroy it. This doesn't feel like random crime." I couldn't disagree. Then Daniels asked the question that made my stomach twist. "Mr. Henry, what exactly happened on this land before the HOA bought it? What history does it hold?" I stared into the fire. Memories rose and fell in my mind like waves. My father, my uncles, the old ranch workers, the secrets families buried, the promises kept, and the promises broken. But there was one thing I knew for sure. Whatever this stranger was trying to hide, it didn't come from my side of the family. "I don't know," I replied, voice low. Daniel studied my face, then nodded slowly. "We'll investigate. For now, don't leave your property and stay indoors tonight." I nodded again, "Thank you." But as he walked away, a cold chill crawled down my spine. Stay indoors. The stranger had already broken into my barn. How long before he returned? And what if he wasn't alone? The fire finally died down after an exhausting hour of water, shouting, and fear. The barn, once a symbol of my life, now lay in smoking ruins. Black, broken wood, ash, and the melted remains of the secret chest. But the weapon inside it, that old gun, that was gone. Lost. Or worse, taken. When the smoke cleared, the firefighters approached me with sympathy in their tired eyes. "Sorry for your loss, sir," one said, removing his helmet. "That barn was old to one spark and—" "You don't need to explain," I whispered. "Thank you for trying." They nodded, then packed their equipment and left. Soon, only a few police cars remained. The HOA members whispered among themselves in frightened little clusters. And I walked toward the ruins. Slowly, carefully. The heat still lingered in the air like a warning. Steam rose from soaked wood. The ground was muddy and black. I crouched near where the chest had been buried. The soil was scorched. The chest smashed. And the gun. Gone. Footsteps approached behind me. Soft ones. I turned. It was not an officer. Not a firefighter. Not someone I recognized. It was a young woman, maybe early 30s, with long dark hair and tired eyes. She wore jeans and a hoodie, not HOA clothes, and she didn't look scared, just sad. "I'm sorry," she said gently. I blinked. "Do I know you?" "No," she replied softly, "but I know Jacob." My breath caught. "Who are you?" I asked, standing slowly. She hesitated, looking over her shoulder at the crowd. "I'm Emily," she whispered, "Jacob's friend." Friend. But the way her voice shook told me it was more than that. "How do you know him?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "He came to me last week. He said he needed help. He said someone was after him, someone dangerous." My pulse quickened. "Who?" I asked urgently. "Who was after him?" Emily stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He said it was someone you'd never expect, someone connected to this land, someone who wanted the past buried forever." My chest tightened. "The stranger in the barn?" I asked. She shook her head. "No," she whispered, "someone worse." I stared at her, fear crawling under my skin. "Emily," I said slowly, "what was Jacob trying to dig up? Why did he come here?" Her eyes filled with tears. "He said there was something hidden here, something dangerous, something connected to your family, but not by blood." My heart pounded. "What does that mean?" She looked me straight in the eyes. "It means the strangers you're dealing with aren't strangers at all." Thunder rumbled in the distance. The wind grew cold. And then Emily said something that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Jacob said he found something in that barn years ago, something he shouldn't have found, something that someone has been trying to recover ever since." I stepped closer. "What did he find?" She glanced nervously at the woodpile where the chest once lay, then leaned in and whispered, "A ledger." "A ledger," I repeated. She nodded. "A book with names, dates, deals, illegal deals, dangerous deals, made on this land before your family ever owned it." I felt my blood run cold. "Emily, what kind of deals?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Gun deals." My heart dropped. Gun deals. On my land. Before my family. Before the ranch. Before everything. Emily's hands shook. "Jacob said the men behind those deals are still alive, still hiding, and still watching this land. That's why he came back to warn you." I stared at her, stunned. "And that gun in the chest?" She nodded. "Proof," she whispered. "Evidence of what really happened here decades ago." My chest tightened painfully. "Jacob wanted to destroy the ledger," Emily continued, "but someone else wanted to protect it. That stranger tonight, he was one of them, one of the men connected to the past, one of the men who didn't want the truth to come out." The night suddenly felt colder. The wind sharper. The shadows darker. "Emily," I whispered, "is Jacob in danger?" She stepped back, tears streaming down her face. "He already was," she whispered, "but now so are you." Before I could respond, she reached into her pocket and handed me a small folded note. He told me to give this to you if anything happened. I opened the note with trembling hands. Just 4 words, written in shaky handwriting. They know you're back. My stomach churned. My heart pounded. My breath shook. Emily stepped away slowly. I shouldn't stay long, they might be watching. Emily, wait, I called. But she shook her head. You need to be careful, she said. They're not done with this land, and they're not done with you. Then she turned and disappeared into the darkness. Before I could even process her words, a loud bang echoed near the ranch gate. A car door slammed. A shadow moved across the road. Officer Daniels spun around, reaching for his weapon. Everyone tensed. And then a voice, cold, deep, and familiar, shouted from the darkness. Henry, you can't hide from this. I froze. Everyone froze. The hooded man. No. This voice was older. Deeper. Sharper. Someone new. Someone worse. Officer Daniels stepped in front of me. Stay behind me, sir. The shadow moved again, faster this time. Linda screamed a high, shrill scream that echoed across the fields. And then, a shot rang out. One single, deafening gunshot. The officers dove for cover. HOA members scattered like frightened birds. And I felt something hot graze my arm. A bullet. Someone fired at me. At me. The night exploded in panic. And the real war for this land had just begun. The gunshot cut through the night like lightning, sharp, vicious, and deadly. The sound echoed across the open fields, bouncing off the ruined barn walls and swelling into the cold air around us. For a split second, everything and everyone froze. Even the wind stopped moving. Then everything happened at once. Get down, Officer Daniels shouted, tackling me to the dirt before I could even react. Linda shrieked so loudly her voice cracked. Greg dove behind a water tank. HOA members scattered in every direction like frightened ants, tripping over themselves and screaming. Another officer yelled, shots fired, SHOTS-FIRED, call for backup. My ears rang. My arm burned where the bullet grazed me. Just a thin, hot sting, but enough to tell me this wasn't a warning shot. They had meant to kill me. Someone out there, hidden in the darkness, wanted me dead. Officer Daniels kept one hand pressed against my chest, holding me down behind an overturned barrel. Sir, stay low, he ordered. Do not move. I nodded, breathing hard. Where did it come from? The tree line, Daniels said quickly, eyes scanning the dark horizon. They're using the shadows for cover. Another officer added, we can't see anything, no visual. HOA members huddled behind cars, shaking and crying. Linda's voice rose above them all. Why are they shooting at HIM? What did he bring into this community? Even now, she thought I was the problem. But I didn't have time for her fear or her ignorance. Because in that moment, I realized something chilling. Someone wanted me silenced. Someone connected to the land. Someone connected to the past. Someone connected to the ledger Jacob discovered. And they weren't afraid of police. They weren't afraid of witnesses. They weren't afraid of consequences. They wanted me dead. The firing stopped. Silence fell again, heavy, tense, electric. Daniel slowly lifted his head above the barrel, scanning the trees. No movement, he whispered, but that doesn't mean they're gone. My pulse hammered in my ears. Stay here, Daniel said firmly. I'm going to check the perimeter. No, I said immediately. You don't understand. Whoever that was, they're tied to the same men who went after Jacob. Daniels hesitated. What men? The stranger in the barn, I said, and someone else, someone even more dangerous. Before Daniels could respond, the radio on his shoulder crackled. Unit 4 backup arriving in 3 minutes. Shots fired reported. All units approach with caution. He let out a breath of relief. Good, he muttered. We'll secure the entire ranch, and we're not leaving until we find that shooter. He started to move, but I grabbed his arm. Be careful, I warned. They're not afraid of cops. He nodded grimly. Neither am I. The backup units arrived with blinding blue lights and heavy boots pounding across the grass. Officers fanned out across the ranch, flashlights cutting through the trees, voices echoing commands. Clear. Check that fence line. Search under the ridge. One officer approached Daniels and said, "We've got tracks leading behind your property. Whoever it was, they were fast. They're gone now." Daniels swore under his breath, "We'll keep looking." The officers kept moving, but I knew. Whoever fired that gun wasn't gone. Not for good. People like that don't run. They wait. They watch. They plan. And there was no doubt in my mind they'd be back. Sometime later, after the area was declared safe enough for civilians, the HOA members slowly crawled out from their hiding spots, looking like children who had just seen a monster. Linda staggered toward me, her face pale, her voice shaking. "We were not safe here," she whispered. "This place, your land, it's cursed." "Cursed?" Greg echoed shakily. "Try dangerous." Another HOA member pointed at me with trembling hands. "Wherever you go, trouble follows. First the cops, then the barn burns down, then a stranger tries to kill us, and now someone is shooting at you." Linda gasped dramatically. "Oh my goodness, what if the shooter thought we were all connected to you? What if we were almost killed just for living here?" I rubbed my forehead with frustration. Enough. But they continued anyway. "This is all your fault. You brought this danger. You need to leave. You made enemies before moving. Who does that?" Their voices blended together into a whining storm. And finally I snapped. I stepped forward. Every HOA member went silent. I looked at them, not with anger but with disappointment. "All night long," I said quietly, "you people judged me, you assumed the worst, you treated me like dirt, you tried to take my home, you tried to find me, you tried to push me out. No one moved. No one blinked. But the truth is," I continued, "this danger isn't about me. It started years before any of you arrived. This land holds history none of you understand." Silence. Deep, heavy silence. Then Greg swallowed. "What kind of history?" I looked toward the burned barn. The kind that powerful men would kill to protect. Shivers went through the crowd. Linda's voice was small now, fragile and scared. What does that mean?" But before I could answer, Officer Daniels jogged over, his face serious. "Sir," he said urgently, "we just found something. You need to come with me." A cold knot formed in my stomach. "What is it?" He didn't answer. That was all I needed to know. Something bad. Something big. Something connected to the same secret the ledger held. We reached the edge of the trees, where several officers had their flashlights pointed at the ground. "What did you find?" I asked. Daniels pointed at the dirt. And when I saw it, my breath left my body. There, half-hidden in dried leaves, was a bullet casing. But not just any casing. Old. Rusty. Decades old. But freshly fired. "What is that?" I whispered. Daniels crouched beside it. "A bullet from a revolver manufactured in the 1970s. I frowned. "That old?" "Yes," he said, "but usable. Someone kept it all these years." My heart pounded. "Why does that matter?" I asked cautiously. Daniels lifted the casing with gloved hands. "Because this," he said, "is the same caliber as the weapon found in your barn tonight." I froze. The weapon from the chest. The weapon tied to the ledger. The weapon tied to the dangerous deals Emily mentioned. The weapon whoever shot at me desperately wanted back. Daniels straightened. "Mr. Henry, whoever fired this, he wasn't just trying to scare you." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" Daniels looked me dead in the eyes. "Whoever fired this was sending a message." I already knew. But he said it anyway. "They want you dead before you uncover the truth." Those words settled over me like ice. Before I could process the weight of them, one of the younger officers jogged up to us. "Detective," he shouted, "we found something else about 20 feet deeper into the woods." Daniels tensed. "What is it?" The officer hesitated. It's a body. My blood went cold. Linda screamed behind me. Greg nearly fainted. A body, Daniels repeated. Yes, sir, the officer said. A man, probably in his 50s, and he's been dead a long time. My hands shook. A dead body near my ranch. Killed decades ago. Connected to the ledger. Connected to the gun. Connected to the shooter. Connected to everything happening now. Daniels faced me slowly. Mr. Henry, he said, I don't know what history your land is hiding. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. But whatever it is, someone is willing to kill for it. I looked toward the dark woods, the shadows deep and silent. A body. A shooter. A burning barn. A dangerous secret. A weapon stolen. And Jacob, my nephew, lying unconscious in a hospital somewhere, fighting for his life. Suddenly, everything grew clear. This wasn't about property. Or HOAs. Or misunderstandings. This was a war. A war I hadn't started. But one I couldn't walk away from. Because someone out there believed that I, an old man, knew their secrets. And they were determined to silence me before I discovered the truth. Daniel stepped forward. We're going to need you at the station tomorrow morning, he said. We'll run tests, ask more questions, we'll protect you. But deep down I knew something. Protection wasn't enough. Not when a murderer was stalking my land. Not when Jacob was in danger. Not when a decades-old secret was resurfacing. And not when someone had already killed once. And was ready to kill again. As the officers roped off the woods and the HOA members huddled in frightened groups, I took one last look at the burned barn. Everything was changing. And the worst part, this was only the beginning.